One Christmas I acquired a K bass guitar, and I always remember the look of disappointment on my father's face when I unravelled it. He said, what can you do with a bass guitar? He's like, well, it holds down everything.
I kind of realised the impact that Bay City Rollers had on all the girls at primary school, you know, because all of a sudden, like, I think the day after Top of the Pops performance, everyone at school came in dressed in tartan, and I kind of realised pretty early on the impact of a pop group.
I remember going to the Hacienda with some schoolmates, and we saw the Smiths playing. It was the week that This Charming Man was out, and about 2 songs in, I was getting crushed at the front. All these gladioli were flying all over the place, and I ended up having to sit between Morrissey's and Johnny Marr's monitor, and I just thought, this is the most amazing thing ever. And on the walk home from the Hacienda, I said, we've got to start a band.
My journey into music wasn't entirely by accident. It was always something that I was hoping would happen. My parents kept a pub, and there was a drum kit there, and I just kind of gravitated towards this beautiful symmetrical instrument. We had this telepathic communication where I'd hit it and it'd make a sound. Instant gratification.
Tellin Stories was a pivotal moment in the band's career.
You're listening to it and thinking, this was a band on a phenomenal roll.
Creatively, it was non-stop.
It just felt like our defining moment at that time.
We were very much sort of like in charge of our own record, and it felt good.
It was all going really so well, you know, it was the perfect way a band should operate.
Hang on to your hopes, my darling, don't let it slip away. An hand that holds you, keeps you warm and helps you live today.
The last thing I said to him was, take care, and he said, I always do. That was the last time I spoke to him.
We needed to go to Abergavenny Hospital because there'd been an accident.
And I kind of felt that this is probably the last song we'll ever do, you know.
It was about as big a shock as any band could have had.
It's my time till the day I die. How high?
If they'd split up at that point, I don't think anybody would have blamed them.
Call it a day, forget the album. No, I don't want to do that. Don't want to take a year off, let's just do it.
Played the most important gig of our lives. Definitely the most ferocious gig of our lives. You know, it was like, just let it all out on stage.
It's odd when you're hearing back stuff that people have done, you know, when they're not there.
Certain records just seem to have a life of their own.
That record had to come out, people had to hear it, and we had to play it.
And it takes and it hurts, I know I'm right. I can bend to a curse, and love shines a light and repays you with force. Yeah, too right, I'm gonna pledge my time till the day I die.
Especially early on, I think Martin had quite a clear vision of what he wanted to be.
Martin was quite specific about what he wanted, and he wanted an Hammond organ, and he wanted someone who could play heavy James Brown style drums, which I kind of was trying to get to.
John was playing with other bands, and I hadn't seen him for about a year, and he just bleached his hair blonde. I said, the hair's good.
I kind of hooked up with Martin, and also at the same time there was a guy named Rob Collins who was playing keyboard.
I knew Rob just by some of the clubs I used to vacate. He was mostly doing nothing.
Baz Ketley was the original singer, but he became disenchanted with the kind of direction we were trying to go, And you know, we started playing gigs with the Stone Roses, and you know, the whole country at that point was starting to change, and we were feeling that movement, and we kind of went on that trip. John was a cool-looking dude. He looked like one of the Birds, Michael Clarke, actually. When we thought that he had the haircut, so we kind of got him to fill the kind of the void that Baz had left by taking his guitar with him, you know. And at the same time, you know, Tim had appeared on the scene by his band supported the Charlatans.
I was fronting the support band. There's a band called the Electric Crane Set. I was singing and it was kind of like going through a bit of a Iggy Pop phase. You know, second song in, take my shirt off, start rolling around the stage and kind of like doing all that kind of thing. I don't know how much of a compliment it was, you know, but I was perhaps like the best thing about the band. Yeah.
He had something, you know, it's something lead singers have, isn't it?
Martin was really, really determined, and you know, in lots of ways, kind of like led it really. And Rob was really, really talented, you know. And it was just a really great time. It was effortless. We didn't know what we were doing. We just knew that it felt right.
There was a really big connection with the five of us. It felt like something was happening.
A lot of things came together with perfect timing, and we were in the right place, ready for it. And we recognised that it was our time.
When we first came out, everyone wanted to sign the band. You know, every major label, you know, American labels were flying over and all that kind of stuff. And we wanted to sign to Beggars Banquet.
There was other offers on the table with silly amounts of money, but that just puts pressure on your creativity, I think. It has a negative effect, but Beggars Banquet wanted to, not just the debut album, but they wanted us for a good 3 or 4.
I think Beggars Banquet knew that if they put a record out by this band and time it just right, you know, a lot of people were going to buy it, and they were right. Your record goes to #1, and then it goes into the Billboard charts as well, and then you're on a tour bus going across Nebraska. You know, you think, hang on, did this happen? You know, we're in Strawberry Studios 12 months ago, recording our first single.
You know, you can't get much more of a Hammond organ record than the first Charlatans album, and I think we're all conscious that the next record should be different. And I think we were looking for more from John Baker.
We were trying to, you know, reaching out and trying to find something. So, and John, I think he felt that that was his time, really.
Mark was in a band called the Waltones, and probably like the best thing about that band too.
Basically, he was doing our press at the time at a place called Red Alert, run by Alison Martin. Said, you know, there's a really good guitarist with no fixed haircut in Manchester who really suit the band.
I had about a 30-minute rehearsal room sort of like session with them, and then sort of like by the end of the day they said, all right, okay, we'd like to put you in the band. I went, fair enough, I'll go and tell the Dole office that I don't need to sign on next week.
At the time we were writing Over Rising and Happen to Die and Me and Time, stuff like that, and a manager and record company wanted us to save the songs for an album, but we thought we'd do an EP, and we did 2 EPs and used up all our songs.
I think coming up to the second album, between 10th and 11th, I think we had run the well of creativity a bit dry there.
We went into the studio to make the second album, and then Nirvana released Nevermind.
The whole Manchester baggy thing was in the past.
Everyone was focusing on Seattle, you know, and we were looking at it thinking it was great as well. The second album didn't get received critically well at all. In fact, I think it got 1 good review in the NME, and everyone else kind of like, it was universally panned. I think that's the term for it.
At that moment we were happy with it. It was a bit unfocused, but the gigs were still selling out. People still had belief in the group.
We made the album that we wanted to make, a more electronic record. But then after that record, we kind of wanted to bring it back to kind of more of a how we sound in the rehearsal room kind of sound, really. And that's, I think, where we found a new, sound that were, a really kind of honest sound, really.
Don't let it stand out in the cold. Don't let it fall into a hole with someone you know. Don't let it out in the cold. Don't let it fall into a hole with someone you know. Can't get out of bed. You're keeping it straight. The city's a mess. Can't get out of bed. You're keeping it. Keep on getting together. It's everything you want it to be.
Can't Go to Bed was a real watershed moment for the band because it was us taking control of our own kind of destiny.
I think it was a really significant song. You could dance to it. And it had really soaring melodies and great chord changes and a kind of great combination between keyboards and guitar. That became our sound for a while. And we sounded like that, in my opinion, for the next two albums.
Mark very much came into his own in the group on Up to Our Hips. We felt the pressure was off. We'd gone back down to that part of South Wales, to Mono Valley Studios. So it all came together quite well. Although Rob did have 4 months away from us. It's Her Majesty's pleasure.
The fact that Rob was kind of out at that time of night driving around with a guy with a replica gun probably doesn't do justice to Rob, because he wasn't that kind of guy, but he's a loyal friend, and the guy that he was with would probably be trying to impress Rob, maybe, I don't know, and but what the upshot is that the guy did something really stupid, and Rob, rather than just leave him behind, waited for him because he was his mate. So by the very nature of him being a friend, he got himself embroiled in it.
Rob was just very quiet about it. He didn't really tell me too much about how he was feeling about it. We were working on tracks till the early hours of the morning, and he was up in the morning again. I think he was trying to put in as much studio time as he could.
It was torturous for him prior to the trial, because he didn't believe he was going to get away with it, and we didn't really know. We just had no idea. So it was terrible for him,
I think he got it was either 8 or 9 months. I think it was 8, and he did 4. The first week that he came out of serving at Her Majesty's pleasure, he was on top of the pops. So it was good. Welcome back, Rob.
The right word's trajectory, right? I can't even say it, but I know that that's what, it looks good on paper. But, the first album was such a rise. And the second album, the people around us who'd risen with us were slightly disappointed, even though the band, I think, were really satisfied with the record. And then the album after that, our keyboard player, we had this him going to jail thing hanging over the record. And then the next album, it was like, right, no one can throw anything at us anymore. We're carrying all this around with us, and it felt, it just felt like life in a lot of ways. You kind of like, you've been through this, been through that, and the same group of people, brothers, band of brothers,
What we had kind of fostered by then is the gang mentality, which is really essential for a band. You've got to be that kind of gang where no one else is allowed in. And it was like our little gang and our unit, and we were making records we wanted to make, how we wanted to make them.
To get out my way, move on up into the city.
no dramas on this one. No one got to prison. No breakdowns. It's just getting on and doing it as a tight unit. It's a proper record.
When we made the Charlatans record, I mean that's just a joyous work made by a band that are actually enjoying themselves, you know, back together again. And Robert done his thing, and he come back and joined the band, and he was really on fire, and so much creative input and so many songs, great songs flying about.
Creatively, it was non-stop. People just bringing out in ideas.
Could have been a triple album, really. You know, just song after song, just inspired. You know.
That was the first time that as an album they'd made something which was, you know, it was properly fully formed. Brilliant. You know, there's other albums where there's fantastic tracks, great singles and stuff, but the Charlatans sounded like a band all pulling together in the same direction.
It was the fourth album, The Charlatans. At the end of recording it and putting it together in sequence, we knew we had something pretty special, and we felt like we'd actually arrived again.
While we were making it, I just kept saying to myself, it'll be number one, you know, it will, because it's brilliant, you know, and it did. And so, not that we were ever wanting to silence our critics or silence anybody, you know, we did. We're just one brilliant album.
The Charlatans album went in at number one, and so that was the point at which you kind of knew that everything was back on an even keel. They were, you know, people gave a shit again.
We were happy, and I think people at Beggars Banquet were happy because they all were told they could have the day off on that Monday. We found out, you know, it was number one.
To say that we deserved it would be the wrong kind of way of putting it, but we felt we'd earned it. We felt we'd earned that right again.
I was very pleased with that. Getting a gold disc for number one record. I was celebrating quite a lot.
Everything was working in the way it should do. There was the right amount of social activity. We were going out and visiting clubs. We'd had some pretty big hit singles. You know, we were getting played on the radio. You know, like during the day, we were on A-lists. It was like, you know, it was a big time for us. You know,
coming towards the end of the concerts of that year for promoting the shows that year, I just remember a couple of people at Heavenly who were doing our press at the time saying, you know, this album has done really good, but your next one will be even, you know, I'll send you into the stratosphere of wherever. And as soon as we finished touring, we went straight back and started writing.
Tellin Stories was the first record that we undertook without a producer in place at any point. Steve Village produced Up to Our Hips, and then halfway through the recording of the Charlatans album, we actually sort of said, Steve, we'd like to take over from now, and it was our first sort of like go at sort of like producing ourselves, and we liked it. We thought we knew what we were doing, and I think we did.
And that's a point where I more or less someone had to steady the ship because they were there. So it wasn't as if I leapt in, I just kind of fell into the position, really. I didn't have to do very much for it to, if you know what I mean, because it came from them anyway. You know, if the snare drum doesn't sound right, it won't make the difference if what you're playing is good. We'd found our environment, we'd found a great studio called Mono Valley where we loved spending time.
That was the place that had the sort of like the soul for us. It was down a little lane, and it was an old mill house. There was a river. There was nobody there. You know, you just had the run of a couple of acres of ground, and you know, it was, see anyone get off my land.
If you're a band that are on that upward trajectory, if you don't have issues and you know things are going well, it's a brilliant place to be because it's isolated and you get to actually be a unit together.
Montevalli, yeah, felt like ours. And it felt like our studio. And there was something about having to, you know, give things a kick to make them work because things were breaking down all the time. But, it was special. It felt right.
Every day was like this. It would be like the sun. It was just like the perpetual summer, never ended. And we would, you know, we just loved being there. And you know, making music was just part of like a great day out, and every day was like a holiday. You know, it was like being in a 6 weeks holiday in summer.
And the town was always full of musicians, you know, one type or another. It was a bit like the Nashville of Britain, I suppose.
At the time, Beggars Bank wanted to know what we were up to. We were saying, well, basically we're living here at the moment, and we're doing research.
If you were making a record today, you'd want it all wrapped up in like 4 weeks. We were taking like 9-10 months doing a record. It's a fortune.
We had developed an almost round-the-clock, 24-hour kind of shift pattern. So you go to bed, you know, you maybe go to bed as it was getting light, and then you get up as it was getting dark, and the whole thing wouldn't have stopped. People have been making music all night.
You could always sort of like hear what was going on if you turn the telly down. There was always a rumble of activity.
The pace was really good. You know, it suited us. We'd, you know, kick football around outside the studio door, and me and Robert go fishing. We took in a stray cat.
We must have spent about 6 years down there. Right, we built a lot of fires in that time and smoked a lot of weed, took a lot of E's. But we recorded and made a lot of great stuff in that period.
Normality had long gone out the window by then. It was now normal pattern to anybody's life. You know, it was just this thing called the Charlatans that we were all inputting into and trying to add to, and it was feeding us, and we were feeding it, and it was getting bigger and bigger. It was amazing. The songwriting would happen in like, you know, two kind of, I'd say, factions, really. Would be the way things were possibly might have been going in that direction, or two units is probably the more the best way of putting it.
Mark and Tim had gone off to get some ideas together to sketch out some songs, and Rob and I and John holed up in a rehearsal room in North Staffordshire.
Mark would come down to see me and spend a week in London, and we'd write in my flat in Chort Farm. I remember How High and North Country Boy being written in Chort Farm. But I think the most significant one for me, and the thing that started it all off really, was Rob, Martin and John had the riff for One to Another.
And it was kind of, you know, quite a monolithic, stonking piece of like kind of rock and roll.
Rob had this riff that he just couldn't stop playing in a rehearsal room, and he just had the riff and just kept playing it, and it would go on for about 3 days. How are you getting on with that riff, Rob? Yeah, still playing it. And then all of a sudden one day it clicked into place, and the song happened straight away.
Mark kind of chopped in with the verse, guitar kind of chords, which made it really easy to sing what I did over the top of it. And I think that was a really great band effort. You know, if you can't get any better, bring Mark in. You know, to do a verse, and if you want to make it better than that, you know, bring Tom Rowland in to produce it.
Tom from the Chemical Brothers just came over and worked his magic on one to another. He kind of fell in love with that kind of massive kind of riff, you know. And watching him in the studio was incredible because I've never seen anyone work like that really. He doesn't have any kind of respect for the machines that he's operating. He will get them to do whatever he wants them to do.
The idea was to do some pictures that are reminiscent of the Rolling Stones' Beggar's Banquet, but in fact have it outside, so it's more of a beggar's picnic. So we went in. We went to get lobsters and fish and cheese and grapes, and Rob had this idea of getting a pig's head. So Tim and Rob and myself went into Monmouth, and Rob went off to the butcher's to buy a pig's head. We eventually got back to the studio, and the table was decorated in the garden. The pig was on there. It had been out in the sun for a while, and the sun was going down. The chaps brought their cars around to shine the lights onto the area. And Brooksy had been up the night before. I think it had a dodgy prawn, and as the pig was melting, he got a whiff of it, and subsequently he felt a little bit bilious and ended up depositing his breakfast over the wall.
Trying to be a little bit philosophical, I suppose that piece of art, that photograph, symbolises what we were about at that time. Really, everybody's bringing something to the table, and that's a kind of a fair assumption of where it was going like at that point.
To me, it was the best single they'd ever released. I just thought it was tremendous, and again, it had that sort of ferocious quality to it. I mean, you put it on now, and it sounds like the moon's coming through the ceiling. It's got everything. It's got like chaos. It's got like that kind of weird dance beats, kind of off-kilter dance beats. It's got this angry, tumbling last final few verses, and you can sing it. You can hum it. It's got a tune. You can't say that about many other songs. Like, we've got all that, pack all that in. Perfect pop song.
whole thing coincided with a sort of rush of kind of, you know, for want of a much better word, a rush of kind of Britpop.
Britpop was all about kind of celebrating kind of, you know, the British kind of way of looking at life in its peculiar, you know, the kind of the Kinks kind of way, the Ray Davies, the Blur kind of way. But we were kind of enjoying the fact that we could mix kind of the Who with Bob Dylan and somehow get away with it.
The influences on Tellin Story were Sly and the Family Stone,
Beach Boys,
Funkadelic,
Sgt. Pepper,
a bit of Exile on Main Street,
Bob Dylan,
the Chemical Brothers,
Loving Spoonful,
probably the Prodigy.
and for me personally, Graham Parsons.
They were casting their eyes more towards the US, and they discovered American country rock, and they discovered this kind of world of music, and being the way that they are, they just threw themselves into it, hugely obsessed with it, and it renewed them, it breathed new life into them.
This might get denied, I'm not sure, but I remember going down there and Mark, they'd recorded a load of stuff. They recorded One to Another, North Country Boy, and I think How High. And Mark was going, yeah, this is probably going to be the single. And I was like, One to Another, that's brilliant. And he goes, no, I think it'll be that, and these will be the B-sides. And I was like, are you fucking joking? And he was like, I couldn't fathom it. I was going, but that North Country was incredible. You can't. And he was like going, yeah, but you don't know what else we're writing. You know, we could write. You know, we're writing better than that. And I was like, mate, that is a single. If you stick that on a B-side, you're insane. And I guarantee my advice would probably not have been taken at all. I'm sure they would have come to that conclusion by themselves. But it was you listening to it and thinking, this was a band, you know, on a phenomenal roll.
When we first started out, I told Martin that I wanted to write the words, even though I wasn't a lyricist, you know. I mean, I didn't know whether I could do it, but I just felt that I had to write something that meant something to me. Baz's lyrics were something to do with, I don't know, dare I say it, the Midlands or something like that. I wanted to write about Calvin and Hobbes, I wanted to write about the Hacienda, I wanted to write about, you know, stuff that interested me, you know. With Tellin Stories, I'd broken up with like quite a long-term girlfriend at the time, and I think a lot of that was somehow being channeled into some of the lyrics. With No Shoes, especially North Country Boy, You're a Big Girl Now. I was just being more direct, I think, because it was about the relationship kind of that wasn't there anymore. My vague sort of like you know, dreamy sort of stuff was getting replaced by something a bit more direct.